Alright, so today we got a new hotfix and a new TWAB with some pretty big changes, so I'm going to be focusing on the most prevalent parts, and with that being said, let's dive right in. Starting with the hotfix and Neomuna Free Roam. Reduce the prevalence of orange health bar enemies to lower the base difficulty of free roam, and fixed an issue that was causing Cabal turrets in Omsa Park to respawn too quickly. So basically just making patrols a little bit easier, which I would rather they didn't. I don't think it really needed it. But it is what it is. It's definitely not going to make that big of a difference. I'd rather them focus on the raid, which, speaking of the raid, fixed an issue where Nezarec would not react to players that were positioned in a Well of Radiance, which, from what I've heard, is just fixing the melee glitch. So overall, that's good because we all know Root of Nightmares is pretty easy. It could use a little bit of a damage buff that doesn't include the master version because that's kind of artificial in a way. But difficulty, again, combatant health scaling for 2 and 3 player fire teams reduced in Season 20 Legendary Exotic missions, and reduced enemy health in Legend and Master Tier Nightfalls, Battlegrounds, Lost Sectors, Offensives, Hunts, and Legend Master campaign missions. So overall, seems they're just lowering the difficulty of the game, which I think now is not necessarily the time to do that. I feel like we should be catering more towards veteran players because we do have quite a big player base, and the game's 9 years old. While I do understand we want to get new players as much as possible, I don't think dumbing down the game for the rest of the community is necessarily the way to go about it. But, I mean, change has been made. They can roll back on it if they want to, but yeah, moving on. They changed some of the commendation score requirements for rank 7, 8, and 9. Rank 7 is now 200, rank 8 is now 477, rank 9 is now 910, and they removed Guardian rank objectives that require players to give commendations from ranks 7, 8, and 9, and reduced the number of commendations for Hawthorne's weekly challenge. Disregard that voice crack. But yeah, overall good. Commendations still I'm still kind of on the fence about it. I think it's an interesting addition. I don't know if it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's a waste of resources, but I think it's kind of fun, that little end screen, seeing the little awards pop up. But yeah, and then general, they reduced the number of additional score stacks added by flare up artifact perk in PvP to 15, down from 30. So that'll definitely require some like testing with fusion grenades and fireball grenades and stuff to see like how to most effectively get that ignition to go off. But we'll see. Not going to be too big of an issue. Moving on, we got weapons. They fixed an issue where target lock was not correctly deactivating on a miss if the weapon was firing at 720 RPM or higher, which is big for things like the raid auto rifle, immortal, weapons like that. Because, especially immortal, because that's destroying in PvP right now, and target lock is obviously one of the traits that you want on it. I don't think it'll kind of knock it off its top spot or make these weapons bad, but it's a good change. It'll level the playing field. And then fix an issue where some players were unable to acquire the Risk Runner Catalyst. I mean, good. You should be able to get the Catalyst. That's just a given. Fix an issue where Quicksilver Storm and Touch of Malice were not receiving the 40% damage bonus against minor enemies. Yes, because I really want Touch of Malice to be good. I don't even have it, which is tragic. But when I do get it, I don't intend on taking it off very often because it was probably my favorite weapon in D1. All right, so now we're going to take a look at some of the TWAB sections. The first one, time for a difficulty conversation, and they basically reduce the enemy HP scaler in all non-raid/dungeon, legend, and master activities by 10%. Reduce the co-op enemy HP scaler in Legendary Avalon by 33% in a full fire team, and they've again mentioned the reduced commendations. So, I mean, they're basically just making non-endgame activities easier, which it could be. I'm still on the fence about it. Like I said, it may be good, maybe bad. I think that upping the difficulty is probably a better option, but that's just my take. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And then we've got the mid-season weapons preview, or the mid-season preview weapons edition. Sorry, and they did a lot with PVE primary weapon balance. They gave auto rifles a 25% buff because SMGs were kind of taking over that range that, or some of that range that auto rifles were supposed to be good at, and they didn't want to make auto rifles kill faster than SMGs because then it would just be kind of a flip. So auto rifle 25% buff should make a lot of them much more viable, especially in PVE. And then pulse rifles, hand cannons, and sidearms got a 20% buff, which is great because I can't remember the last time that I really used any of them in PVE outside of if they were for a champion mod. So that's good. I can finally bring my my PVE role palindrome back in because I used that a lot back in. I don't remember what season it was, but I used it a lot back when Adept Palindrome came out, and it was the Grandmaster Nightfall weapon, and I got a good roll, and it was very fun to use in PVE. Is my point here, and I'm glad to be able to get to use it again. Scout rifles 10% buff because obviously we know if scout rifles get buffed too much, it's just going to be sit in the back of the map and just kind of whittle away at their health, which is really boring. No one wants that. So a 10% buff is good. It'll definitely make them more viable instead of the typical like uh, funnel web and wither horde plus a hothead rocket. So it'll add some variety of loadouts, which is definitely a good thing. I think when we have a meta, which obviously there always is, it's better to kind of have that variability. It just makes the game more fun. It makes the game feel less repetitive on that weekly cycle. You can be like, I'm going to use this loadout this week, which is good. And they also made a change to SMGs and bows. SMGs, they changed the Ikelos SMG specifically because the way that it was made back in Warmind, it had basically a like special tuning to the scope to where it was the equivalent to Zen Moment at max strength and is just always active. So now they changed that so it's a little more in line with the archetype of SMG. So it's gonna have more recoil, but it's still gonna be a good weapon. Probably less so in PvP, but it'll still be great in PvE with Jolt. And they're also making the time to kill on SMGs from like 0.67 to 0.77, and they're decreasing the forgiveness of missed crits. So overall, it'll be a little bit slower, but I mean, SMGs are still going to be great in PvP. It's really not going to make that big of a difference because no one's actually going to be hitting all their crits with an SMG for the most part. Obviously, there's some exceptions, but it's more so going to be like half crits, half body shots, and just it's not going to be too big of a change. It's literally 0.1 seconds. That's barely noticeable by the human eye. Now we have fusion rifles. So fusion rifles, they increase burst damage by 15 from 245 to 260, and the damage per bolt from 27.2 to 28.9. But the damage in PvE is unchanged. They also nerfed rapid fires heavily when shotguns had that big drop in usage because they didn't want them to like just be the new shotguns. But now that shotguns are in a good place with the new pellet spreads and airborne effectiveness, they're bringing back rapid fires and kind of reducing some of the nerfs they made and kind of bringing them back up to par. It can defeat now all resilience levels with 7 bolts, so should be good. We have the likely suspect that pretty much everyone gets, I believe everyone gets, with Witch Queen, and everyone should have the pattern by now, I believe. And so you can just go craft a really good roll, and it'll be more than viable in PvP. Trace rifles also received a bit of a buff because unless you're that one guy you face every 5 games who uses like Prometheus lens and is just an absolute god and drops a like 2 we ran out of metals, then they're kind of hard to use, which obviously is like skill issue. Just learn how to use it, but sometimes it's just like they're not as rewarding as they should be. And so they increase the base damage by 4%. They reduce the precision hit multiplier, and they increase the effectiveness of stability at reducing flinch by 10% at 100% stat, and it scales down at lower values. So trace rifles will be more viable for the average PvP player, which again is good, more variability. And I do enjoy using trace rifles, but I would like to have them be not something I need to practice. I want to just go in and play laser tag. Like, let's be honest. Everyone wants to go in every once in a while and play laser tag, but that's not really an option at all times. So this hopefully will make that a possibility. Sniper rifles, they reduce recoil by, well, specifically rapid frame sniper rifles. They have struggled to find a place in PvP and PvE since they can't do the two-shot body shots anymore and have similar ammo capacity to other archetypes. So what they did was they reduced recoil by 50%, and they increased the inventory stat by 30%, magazines and reserves. So that's great. Rapid fires are back. I will most certainly be using my supremacy in PvP because that thing has been sitting in the vault collecting dust for far too long. And it'll even be good in PvE now. So things like Cloud Strike will be pretty good again. Even though it was never really bad, it's just like it was meta when it first came out in DSC, but now it's kind of like just average. Hopefully, we'll get a like overall full sniper rehash because I really want to use Whisper of the Worm again, and have it. Honestly, I just want to have the snipers be meta, but that's just me personally. Obviously, some people feel different. But exotic weapons, final warning, it no longer tracks through barricades, which is funny. Like they say, you can't lie. It's pretty funny to see someone else mauled, but it's still unfair, and it's a needed change. Teraba, they made it so Ravenous Beast is harder to proc. They reduced the amount of Ravenous Beast energy generated when taking damage from 3% to 1%, and reduced the zoom from 16 to 15. Because back when it first came out, it was a lot harder to get Ravenous Beast to proc because survivability was lower back then. But now that it's higher, you can almost get it after one engagement if you top it off with like injuring yourself with a grenade or like baiting some damage from an enemy. So it's a little bit too easy to proc now, which has definitely been noticeable in PvP because Teraba has just been like going ham in PvP recently. Obviously, Immortal's still top dog, but before Immortal. And Revision 0, there's a bit of an issue with fourth time's a charm when it went into Hunter's Trace. It was like causing some unfortunate issues where activating it too early while the perk was up caused the weapon to overflow its limited mag size and return to the normal pulse rifle mode. So they fixed that, so fourth time's charm can continue to work while Hunter's Trace is active, but it won't be able to grant ammo until all shots have been expended. So you can still enjoy 2 free shots provided by the perk as long as you hit all 4 Hunter's Trace rounds without worrying about being kicked out of the mode. And they buffed the Hunter's Trace rounds by 25% in PvE and the Hawkeye Heavy Burst rounds by 75% in PvE. So there's going to be that bit of a trade-off when choosing between the Origin perks to deal more damage in the primary mode, but charging Hunter's Trace is slower, or dealing less damage, but charging is a little bit quicker. So those are the exotic buffs that they did and changes. And there's also Season 21 launch. There's going to be a sweeping rework of weapon hipfire reticles to display more useful information like accuracy, aim assist, charge state, exotic perk state, things like that. Aggressive frame, SMG nerf, and a 10% PvE buff to sniper rifle damage. So maybe, just maybe next season, sniper rifles will be the meta. Whisper of the Worm, we can get after it, have some fun. But there will be a lot more buffs and adjustments to more than a dozen exotic weapons like Grafton Lance, Salvation's Grip, which, oh my god, is probably the worst exotic in the game, so it needs it more than many weapons. And they're also going to be taking a look in the future at zoom and fall-off damage, how those interact, things like rangefinder, to try and make it more like a feel-based perk with rangefinder as opposed to like actually like it affects the zoom, which then affects the range, which then makes, if you don't have the perk, this weapon not viable. They're trying to make it less of that so you can kind of have more options with the rolls that you get on weapons, which obviously good. And they're going to look into, as it says, decoupling damage fall off from zoom with a like refresh of the base damage fall off values to compensate. So it'll make them able to better control engagement ranges of individual archetypes. So just kind of make the actual tuning of weapons a little bit easier. So maybe we won't have these like huge swings in whether a weapon's good or it's terrible or things like that. And yeah, so that is about it for the major weapon updates and hot fixes. So appreciate you guys for watching, and if you guys enjoyed, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you again soon. Bye.